Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity is a Nintendo project released on September 20th of this year. The Zelda series has improved throughout the years and is continuously delivering. If I'm going to be honest, I rarely played Zelda games. I have them. I don't know. It's not like I'm uninterested. I have them for a reason. I guess I have other content I want to finish first before getting into other things necessary. However, I did play Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time. Both great, although I much prefer Wind Waker. I'm aware of its cartoony looks. That's probably one of many reasons why I enjoy it, similar to what I've experienced with Age of Calamity. And I'm here to express some highlights and some downfalls towards this hack and slash project developed by Omega Force, published by Koei Tecmo, that launched exclusively on the Nintendo Switch. Without further ado, let's get into the deeper context on Age of Calamity and of course what are my personal thoughts on. No spoilers, but I will talk about some variations on gameplay both like and dislike. Stick around if you want more reviews in the future on the channel. Let's do this. Age of Calamity takes place 100 years before the events of Breath of the Wild, which is one of the best games ever. A story of the champions as Zelda struggles to awaken her powers as a sign of desperation of helping those in need, and Ganon's resurrection. Most people would ignore the entirety of these kind of games since the purpose of them are family friendly. I just don't see that in the Zelda series. Well, at least sometimes. Story driven that makes me feel for the characters is what makes narrative so special because of its performance. This made me had a strong connection for certain protagonists. It was mind blowing. The climax from joy to desperation to hopeness of backing down from battle even if it means sacrifice or all hope would be lost. It all adds up since it received good ratings and reviews. Well, not everyone. There are people who don't like the style comparing to what Breath of the Wild was. It's understandable. If you compare the two, they're completely different, at least gameplay comparison wise. Everything else remains the same. I'm guessing not a lot of people like hack and slash games since the enemies are all over the place. I find it hilarious that from all that negativity it received, the only thing I'm seeing is that it's nothing like Breath of the Wild, since apparently that's the only Zelda game that ever exists according to people. Other than that, nothing bad about it even gets mentioned. Now here's what I personally think on Age of Calamity. I never played any of the Hyrule titles, so not only I didn't know what to expect on the quality, but heading into it almost without knowing it's part of the Zelda franchise. The timeline, however, is different. It's basically a prequel to Breath of the Wild, actually. I thought it was a good idea to play this before that one. I mean, I recently got my Switch, get off me. I headed straight into the game just like this and I was hyped as fuck. I felt like a one-man army until the more I played through it, it started to get to me a little more on its repetitive gameplay. It reminds me of Mad Max combat-wise, only a little, with the enemies surrounding you waiting for an opening. It can get tedious, it just never really bothered me enough to not complete the game because I was having a good time getting to know these silly characters, gameplay, and story. So many playable characters, although I only like to play a certain few of them, the rest weren't it for me. On the map you can upgrade your characters, change gear before entering battle. They even added a mechanic where you can make food from villages, not only help you gain XP quicker, rather have things you need to your advantage in battle like extra lives, movement speed, taking less damage from enemies, which is pretty cool. Still, there are flaws here that really bothered me through my experience, like consistently giving orders to boss that are brain dead. Having to walk miles to the next objective is a pain in the ass. Don't even get me started on the recommended level crap in order to progress further to the chapters. I really hate having to deal with that. Does it ruin what I said? No. There will be times where you're stuck on something that either makes you quit early or just don't want to deal with it at all the moment prior. Any professional will understand that patience is the key to success unless you want to rush through it. Good luck with that, kid. Just like things I hate, there are things I love. Weapons, dodging an enemy's attack perfectly that gives you plenty of time to break its shield, other ways to stun lock a target or simply do more damage. All these things is enough for me to enjoy games like this. Maybe I need to stop playing good games or else I'm gonna just give good ratings on every game I anticipate. Gonna end up being another IGN channel. But anyway, besides the combat and movement, there is another thing that keeps my interest in Age of Calamity, the reason or why I bothered with it in the first place. Everyone's favorite little elf. At least that's what I think he is, right? Anyway, yeah, Link is the main character. Just like on the rest of the Legend of Zelda games, our perspective is on his eyes. You can just picture you as him. I'm only saying this because he don't talk. The voice actor must have had a lot of fun with his job, got that good paycheck. My son is nice. Overall, I love Link. I used to play him all the time in Smash games alongside Samus and Yoshi. For a character with no emotion, you can somewhat relate. That says a lot from character development alone. Impa is my main character that I love to play as whenever she was available. My girl was out here Naruto running, he even does Shadow Clone Jutsu. I'm highly convinced that this character was inspired by Naruto. If so, that's pretty dope. Very dope. I grew up on the Naruto series and it's my favorite anime show. Back to the topic, Impa was just a random civilian, I think. After finding herself in trouble, went on adventures with Link and the champions. My personal thoughts on the character, she's just a badass. I really like her character. I always get these feelings whenever I see Zelda, I get pumped up. Not so sure why. This time around the narrative took an approach where we as the player get to experience the character's growth and what she had to gain and lose in order to become who we all know is today. I love Zelda's point of view. It's this strong connection over losing something that's been by your side without ever knowing or remembering about it really had an effect on me the most throughout the game. There are a lot of characters, but only a few that I really want to talk about that I personally think is more interesting. Zelda is among those, possibly one of my favorite character developments throughout the years. It takes a toll as from this to now we see a picture representation of greatness. And that, my friends, is Zelda. Daruk is my favorite champion. Although I wasn't a fan playing as him as the physics didn't work with me well at all, it was nice for a character like him to be in the story where things started to get dark. You have that one character to brighten up the day. Really nice guy. I really fuck with this character heavy. Speaking about the physics and mechanics, let's talk about the gameplay. Reminds me of Kingdom Hearts, only better, more efficient, more balanced and organized. Just part of it does, I already experienced combat. Atmosphere is absolutely fantastic. The creativity into doing all this high quality is impressive. People say when it comes to the combat, all you're doing is smash button on one button. I highly disagree on strong terms. Yes, on smaller enemies, what else were you expecting when there are a shitload of them? But on the mini bosses that surrounds with enemies can be a challenge, specifically when you don't know what you're doing, even first timers. Can't stay in your comfort zone for much longer because there will be plenty of time where you have to strategize on your position. Where to go from here? How can I manage to overcome something that I've done with the last battle, but better? There are things you always have to think twice about before underestimating your foes. I love the gameplay, I love the soundtrack, and open world vibes that I couldn't help but mention at least this one time. Another thing about strategizing when it comes to particular enemies in the game. The boss fights were cool, except they're really repetitive. It can get frustrating having to fight the same mini-boss throughout the game, and I say mini-boss because they're not important in terms of quality boss fights. The only real bosses are, well, just one. Think of how Bowser is the main antagonist in Mario and is pretty much the final boss in all those games. Now, you can say the same with the Legend of Zelda bosses, except only this time it's a different antagonist. Doesn't change the fact that there's only one of them. Literally the only real boss fight in the entire game. Two things I was overall disappointed with, which was the lack of boss mechanics and the fact that one point of the game had these unique bosses that were completely different than what we had to face up until a certain point of the game. Ends up being regular enemies in the game. How original is that? Overall, it didn't bother me like that. Gonna need more than that if you want me to really despise the game. Bosses were alright, I've seen and experienced better. It was still fun to pick your fights or just head for the next location that you needed to be since there was so much to do. That's something that really stood out for me. Now, wait just a second. Before I talk about the overall discussion, I want to discuss something very important with Age of Calamity that made my opinions change over time the more I played. The movement, character development, environment, connection, and the story. All these things I've just mentioned is part of what makes a game as a whole overall better. Take on what makes games so special. We don't just play it for the graphics, that's little kids talk. You don't know what you're talking about, sit down and let the professionals discuss great quality projects. Yes, improvement is also important to video games as technology gets better over time, but it's more to it than that. Think about what my man Link said. Nothing, because it's not hard to tell why they're what they are today. Anyways, I said what I needed to say. Here is my final thoughts and the results for Age of Calamity. Age of Calamity risens the franchise and brought more than what it should have for new players and loyal Zelda fans that wants to understand where it all started with the champions. A hack and slash action-packed Nintendo franchise that is fun for everyone to enjoy. Giving Age of Calamity an 8 out of 10. 2 down, 1 to go, which is Ori and the Will of the Wisp. Not so sure if it'll arrive on time before December. If not, then I'll replace it with Origami King, which funny because I did ask you people to vote for it on my Instagram. And yeah, you people wanted a review then the final boss and ending, so I'll definitely do a review of Origami King. And Chronos probably, yeah. So like that, not only you get those 2 reviews, but 2 of the Origami games in one package. That's right, I'll be reviewing both if it doesn't come on time. If you're scratching your head wondering how that'll work, 2 games in 1 review, oh, it'll work. I'll always make it work. Once again, thank you so much for those who stick around and watch my videos. Be sure, please be sure, if you're brand new, the channel subscribe, please subscribe. If you want the latest gameplays, reviews, and quality content, you know, just sign out here is nice. I gotta make a check out here on the Hypebeastman channel. This was a lot of fun, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give your boy a like. Peace.